Seems like whenever anyone's talking about the 100 Thieves PR disaster and the situation with Cody Sun and Rikara, everyone is dodging the conclusions that are alluded to that end up keep popping up, yet no one really wants to talk about it. And so the situation in which Rikara is playing because he's been better in scrims, I think that's complete bullshit, right? You have a guy who can't even survive laning phase, let alone a good lane matchup with like Zaya against Kaisa. So this guy can't even get past the laning phase portion of the game. So I refuse to believe that he's performing better than Cody Sun, right? And maybe you might say, okay, well, maybe he actually is performing better in scrims, right? You can't know. That's in the background. Like how can you say that Cody Sun is performing better in scrims than Rikara? Okay, yeah, maybe that's true. But after multiple performances on stage to where he, like I said, can't even get past laning phase, then maybe it's time to put in Cody Sun, right? And the it seems as though the scrim data that you're getting from this player is not actually holding up to on-stage performance, so it's faulty data. So you might as well just go with this other quantity, which is a known quantity anyways, and he's performed on stage as well too, although sometimes he has choked. But you can see that he is clearly a better player than Rikara, right? And that's no slight to Rikara, right? He hasn't been playing as long as Cody Sun, right? He's still, in my eyes, just an NA Academy ADC player. So why would you purposely not play the better player? That's the crux of the issue. That's what everyone wants to know, right? And the only other reasonable explanation to not play this better player is because 100 Thieves are preparing for the future by giving this player stage time, right? Because if you don't plan on signing Cody Sun again next year, well, then why would you want to play this player this year, right? And if you give Rikara this stage time right now and he's supposed to stay within your organization, well, there are one of two things that can happen. Is that he does really good and he ends up showing up, and his progression just ends up skyrocketing because he's getting all of these on stage experiences, and so therefore leveling up his own play. So then come next season he's able to start within the LCS and you have a pretty decent ADC, right? So that's one way that the situation can go. The other one is that he performs poorly, right, which he has been doing, and then he just goes back into NA Academy like he should, and still level up his skills over there because he probably is performing decently in NA Academy and just needs time to level up instead of facing the likes of Reckless or Jackie Love, two of some of the best ADCs in the world, right? So you have these situations in which you would just rather not play the better player. And then on top of that, it's okay, well, so you're saying that you intentionally are throwing worlds, or you intentionally also threw the playoffs in NALCS, right? That, and yeah, to an extent, that probably is the case, but it's also that, okay, well, if this player doesn't want to play on the team because of internal arguments or what have you, and if someone doesn't want to play the game, they probably aren't going to play good anyways, right? That just means that, okay, they aren't going to try and they don't give a shit about the results. Like, okay, well, yeah, then I wouldn't want to play the player. That's like telling someone that they're fired from a job, right? A week in advance. Say, okay, yeah, you're fired, but we're gonna go ahead and give you this extra week to go ahead and play out your job and just do the duties that you've normally been doing. But we just wanted to give you a forewarning that next week you won't be working with us. It's like, okay, well then you give an opportunity for this guy to just not give a shit, right? And that's why no job does that. No job says, okay, yeah, you can finish out the rest of the week though, but we're gonna fire you at the end of the week. So just Just letting you know. It's like, no, that that doesn't happen. And that's the same on the inverse. It's like, okay, well, if he doesn't want to play, well then why would you have him play when he just doesn't want to and has no regard for the results at all? So the the better situation in what you could do is pick Rikara, and maybe he, like I said, levels up his level of play and is able to be a starter in LCS next season. And if not, that's fine, because he just goes back to academy and still does the same thing, right? And maybe even better because he got experience from some of these better ADC players. So there is another point to say that Rikara is he's not at fault. He's like the lover caught in between. He's this mediator that's caught in between these two lovers that are just bickering and thrown into the mix completely, and it's not his fault, right? He's this academy ADC player. He's trying his heart out. Like, I think everyone reasonable, at least within the community, gets that aspect as well too. Is that you can't expect this guy to perform well because he's a rookie, right? So the whole community is angry over the communications about Meteos and Rikara and Cody Sun. That's the main focal point of this issue, and they're not saying that 100 Thieves are a bad organization in terms of being a franchise slot and fan base or branding or whatever. I think everyone can agree that getting to Worlds, in their first try is pretty commendable. So the organization itself, in that regard, in being somewhat competitive within the new franchising landscape, is quite commendable, right? They're more so angry about the communication over these situations, right? With Meteos suddenly getting traded to FlyQuest, which, by the way, I think everyone seems to be forgetting that he was traded to FlyQuest because 100 Thieves had said that was the only team that was available. And Meteos was angry, saying that, well, he didn't really get enough time to ask any of these other teams. It was just that he was suddenly traded over to FlyQuest. But remember, this was in between the middle of seasons, between spring and summer. And so you have a situation to where all these players are tied up into contracts, right? So they have longer standing rosters, especially than before, because now franchising allows for longer contracts, right? You can buy into building up players over a longer period of time. So that means everyone's roster was essentially locked in spring all the way through summer, right? So yeah, probably was pretty difficult to find another team for Meteos, which then he was offered a substitute position slash 50-50 situation with Santorin, and that he might be able to get some play time on stage, but he was pretty much just going to be a sub, right? I think everyone forgets that situation. Now, Rikara and Cody Sun, this is the new angry thing that people are focusing on 100 Thieves. And 100 Thieves as the organization has said that they're protecting the players and the staff, right? And there may have been maybe some disagreements or out of game disagreements, right? Or complications and just general arguments, etc. that happen to where that's why Cody Sun is not on the team, because obviously it's couldn't be performance based. So then they had came out and said that they don't want to throw their players under the bus, right? This keeps getting repeated over and over again. Well, if they don't want to throw their players under the bus, which means they haven't already, right? So that would mean technically that they would have thrown Cody Sun under the bus already if it meant it was performance based, due to saying Rikara is better at scrims and they're just having better results than him because he's playing better. So it's clearly not performance based. So, and I think a lot of the fans know that it's most likely not performance based, right? That's why no one buys the whole excuse that Rikara is doing better in scrims. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that Cody Sun is at fault, right? Maybe other players simply could have disagreed with him or been angry at him for whatever reason, right? And then you also have to think that Cody Sun has the lowest veterancy on the team next to Anda, right? It's way lower veterancy than Afromu, than Someday, than Ryu. Less value pretty much than all of them too, because he's a newer player as well. So it's pretty obvious. Well, if the one person that everyone's pissed off or someone's pissed off at is Cody Sun, then yeah, then you just remove him from the situation instead. And the community has this weird need to know everything, like this weird open communication, and that is in due part to because of just how close people are with the personalities within esports, right? You have streams that go on for 8 hours at a time, right, where someone is live streaming for 8 hours, which means they can't really fake their personality all that much, right? You're going to reveal your true tendencies and everything. So you have that close connection with players. You have Twitter, which is just super personal because it's just random thoughts that are going through people's heads, and it's barely any characters at all, right? So which also leads to a lot of misunderstandings as well too. And then you have Reddit, which a lot of the pros are on Reddit and communicate on Reddit as well. Our whole lifestyle is on the internet, right? And that has created this closer experience. And especially considering that within traditional sports, a lot of the teams have more players on it, right? You have 10 players on a team sometimes, right? Or 11 players on a team in football, right? So there are just more players for the fans to have attention on. So it becomes a lot more spursed out, right? So these fans, or the fans in general in the community, have a want or a need to know everything. And it's funny when people end up opening up, because oftentimes they just end up getting flamed, right? And that's because the public wants this public trial. They want to be the judge. They want to determine who is right or wrong within any two parties. And in this situation, it's quite easy to read between the lines of that it's not performance based, therefore it's out of game based, or just attitude problems, or something along those lines. And with that information, I think it's enough for the public. It's like, okay, just draw your conclusions from that. And although they might not be correct, and 100 Thieves are also allowing you to draw these conclusions, remember that aspect as well too, is that they're allowing you to draw your own conclusions because they don't want to release their own statement. So then that's what you should do. You should go ahead and draw whatever conclusions that you can from the situation at hand, because that's all the information that you have, right? So the community just seems to be caught up in this entire aspect of the need or the want to know what is going on. And I get that from a fan perspective, that if you're a fan of 100 Thieves, it might be somewhat frustrating to not know the entire situation. But it's obvious that they have very good reasons as to why they don't want to, because as I said, they don't want to throw players under the bus. And you have to respect 100 Thieves to have the balls to be able to stay silent in a situation like this and just not burn bridges. Because as a new organization, you definitely don't want to burn bridges. And you don't want to start a war with players, because that's a war that you're most likely never going to win. Especially as a new org, you most certainly aren't going to win. Just imagine if 100 Thieves went to war with Meteos, and they both, like, say the situation was, super worse, like something just dark in the background that both of them had done or whatever, and they decided to start a war, and suddenly Meteos starts to pick them apart piece by piece, and then 100 Thieves comes out, starts to pick Meteos apart. It's obvious that Meteos is going to win that war, right? Like, everyone likes Meteos way more than 100 Thieves. He's been in the game longer, right? So as a newer org, you don't want to burn those bridges. You don't want to start a war with players. And if you can protect your players and keep silent about it, I think the fans should respect that. I don't get a reason as to why you should not respect that. Also, given the fact that the player themselves is silent about this situation too. So why would you not want that? If it's amicable between both parties that they choose to stay silent in this situation, why would you not respect that? That's what both of them want. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So anyways, 100 Thieves, everyone I think would agree that their branding, their fan base, or what maybe was their fan base, their player acquisition, and just them going to Worlds in their first year is amazing. It's blows any expectations I had out of the water for a new organization joining the LCS. So in that regards, 100 Thieves are doing pretty good, but their communication and their PR, I don't even think it's a disaster, because apparently what they could reveal is worse than what they are doing a lack of communication of. And if both parties don't want to communicate what is going on, then I think as the public, you don't have any say, or you shouldn't even have the right to know what's going on. If both of them don't want to say what's going on, then that's perfectly fine. That's just two people that want to keep a secret amongst each other. I think as that and as privacy, you should probably respect that. I don't know, there's this thing called privacy that people, teams, players, human beings would like to have. So yeah, I don't think 100 Thieves has had a big PR disaster like everyone has been saying. And I think the fan reaction is just a little bit overblown, because first of all, they aren't reading between the lines of what actually is happening, and secondly, they aren't respecting the privacy of amicable privacy of both the player and the organization themselves. So